Welcome to another edition of Wealthy and Wise. I'm your host, Adam Kente, Executive Corporate Analyst for NCH. And we brought in a really special guest today. As we're ending the end of 2022, we start thinking about looking back at the year, how's our businesses done, looking forward, projecting for next year, and starting thinking, how can our businesses grow and expand? And one of the most important elements of growing and expanding any business is business credit. So we brought in an absolute expert on business credit. This is Miss Danielle Creamer. And Danielle, you've been with NCH for a very long time in our credit department. And give our audience just a quick background of what you do and your knowledge and expertise.
Yes, so I recently took over our business credit department as manager. And so I work with our clients. We help our clients establish a strong business credit profile so that they can use this business credit profile as a reference to start obtaining lending and financing for their business.
Fantastic. So I always try and think of things that people just don't know, that having taken time out of their day to listen to this podcast, they're able to find new things that are going to be helpful for their business. And I want to start with, yesterday I was helping a client that had formed their own company, and they had went on to Dun & Bradstreet and requested their business DUNS number. And I was not sure how this would affect or if they had a score or anything, so I had Jamie went ahead and pulled the credit report from DMB to see what's showing, and immediately it was a red flag. What happened?
Yes, so this happens quite a bit with some of our clients that, are anxious and they want to go out there and they want to get their free DUNS report because it's popular. However, most of our clients don't know that you do have to meet Dun & Bradstreet's compliance requirements in order for you to have an active DUNS profile. And so Dun & Bradstreet, who's been around for years, their whole purpose is to mitigate fraudulent businesses. And so they want to be sure that you are an actual, active, legal, legitimate business. And so a lot of times, if you go in there and you request it and you don't have an actual physical business address or you don't have a business telephone number, they will go ahead and flag the business as out of business or a cautionary business.
And this client in particular, because they requested their own DUNS number, that immediately flagged the account.
Correct.
And now it has to be fixed. And it can be fixed, right?
Absolutely, yes. And, it is a fairly simple process in fixing these flagged accounts, but we'll walk our clients through that process of what exactly they need to do to be in compliance with Dun & Bradstreet to get that flag removed.
Okay, good. So that was number one, is their account was flagged. Number two, there was nothing reporting to Dun & Bradstreet. So there is obviously no profile. This morning, I was looking at another credit report, and the person has been in business for a few years, has 2 items reporting to Dun & Bradstreet, and 0 score. Their credit line was, credit reference line, or the amount of credit that they should get, was based on their NAICS code. So I was told that the NAICS code determined how much money was recommended that a bank would lend to her. How does that impact the business?
Yes, so each industry has risk within Dun & Bradstreet. And so dependent upon the business that they're in, as well as the demographics of where they're located, those risks matter with the credit recommendation that Dun & Bradstreet will recommend. So it's just dependent on what industry they're in that Dun & Bradstreet will come up with that number.
So this one was a management consulting or consulting management, and it said recommended $22,000, but there was nothing else. So obviously this person has some work to do. They had a couple things reporting to Dun & Bradstreet, but typically, in order for us to get a good score for the business, how many things should be reporting on their credit profile?
That's a great question. Most, business owners don't know that when you're trying to establish credit, you have to have a certain amount of trade lines reporting on the business credit report. And so that amount is 3. You have to have a minimum of 3 credit accounts that are reporting positive activity to Dun & Bradstreet to generate that business credit score.
So if you are an 18-year-old kid, you're starting off, you get a small secured credit card as a business, it's not like personal credit that everything automatically reports. We have to pick companies that are actually going to report to Dun & Bradstreet.
Absolutely.
And in your team, you guys have developed the playbook as to who to work with, when to work with them. So for example, part of our goal of building business credit is to not weigh down my personal credit with all these business things. And the more business credit that I can get, the less likely it is that I need to use my personal credit, which obviously utilization rates on personal credit plays a huge role. So getting all these business credit lines set up can be so valuable in operating and expanding the business, especially if you're in an industry where you don't have steady paychecks coming in all the time.
Absolutely.
And we've got to use this capital to make money or just for operating expenses for the business. So you were talking earlier about there are some things that you're at the Experian. Now the main credit bureaus are Dun & Bradstreet is number one, number two is Experian Business, and number three is Equifax. And you were sharing with me that Equifax is really nothing that we would worry about. How do they play into the credit world?
Yeah, not a lot of lenders or creditors are going to pull your Equifax business credit reports. They're just not. The metrics that they use for their scoring is not something of great value when it comes to mitigating risk for these businesses. So a lot of times you may get some commercial trade lines to report to Equifax business, but that's pretty much it. So majority of vendors, creditors, they're going to look at your Dun & Bradstreet business credit report, and then they're going to look at your Experian business credit report.
So we focus on building the Dun & Bradstreet, and Experian isn't like, so Dun & Bradstreet, we have to make sure we have the DUNS number, compliance, all those pieces. Is Experian business the same way?
Experian is very similar. There are a couple of differences with the types of credit accounts that report to Experian. So with Experian, you got to have a little bit more revenue that's generated for the business in order for you to qualify for an account that reports mainly to Experian Business.
Very good. Now on credit cards, the business Visa, MasterCard, Amex, those are almost always looking at your personal credit, correct?
More than likely, almost always, unless you have a great amount of revenue coming in for the business, then yes, they have to be able to figure out how much can you afford to take on in credit. That's how they want to base that approval.
Very good. So the fraudulent thing you're talking about, these credit bureaus are looking to make sure that your business is a low risk, you're not in a high risk industry, high risk category, bills get paid on time. That's building that DMB profile. You were talking about in the South, you're at the Experian conference you were at. Can you share with our audience today what happened at this conference and kind of what that conference is?
Yes, so I attended the Experian Business Quarterly Conference, and during that we get lots of great information of the changes that's happening in business credit, even in personal credit. And during the last quarterly meeting, they had mentioned that in the South, there are a lot more fraudulent businesses down South. So when it comes to trying to obtain any type of line of credit down South, it's a little bit harder to do. So they want to be sure that you are not a fraudulent business. So they are really checking the background of these industries, the LLCs, to be sure that you are an active entity before they extend any type of line of credit to any business that is down South.
So when we say down South, we're talking primarily Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Florida.
Florida even, yes. Yep.
So
all of those states.
All of those states have just extra scrutiny just based on that location because there's been a lot of fraudulent activity, which I think is extremely interesting.
Yes.
So there still are credit lines, but these are obviously more strict and more difficult to get. I've always thought about, in personal credit, I had a client yesterday that reached out that had somebody applying for a home loan in her name, and she's figuring out how we can get this canceled. And there are federal laws in place that really regulate personal credit, where she can, if she has identity theft, steps she can take. And is there anything like that for business?
Absolutely not. There isn't a lot of steps that you can take when it comes to certain things like that. So as you mentioned, yes, personal credit, it's federally regulated. There's laws that are put into place to protect consumers. When it comes to business credit, it's not necessarily federally regulated yet. It's all voluntary. So all of these vendors and creditors, they are reporting activity to the business credit bureaus on a voluntary basis.
So that is one of the challenges in building the business credit, whereas personal credit, everything automatically reports. Before you know it, you got a FICO score of the business. They might report to Dun & Bradstreet, they might not.
They might not.
And I've had the clients over the years that have worked through Dun & Bradstreet, and you pay them some money, they say, great, now just contact the people that you work with, ask them if they will report to Dun & Bradstreet. And what do you see happening for those clients that go through that program with Dun & Bradstreet? What happens to the reporting in their profiles, in your experience?
Yes, that's a really good subject that you brought up there. We have had clients that do go after those types of trade lines, or what we call it self-reported trade lines. They don't hold a lot of value when it comes to trying to establish the business credit score. So it's not necessarily recommended to self-report those business transactions.
So one, don't apply for your own DUNS number.
Absolutely.
Contact NCH and talk with the credit department here so we can do it right, so there's no red flags and not the time and expense involved with fixing those problems. And aside from that, it's working with the right people at the right time. Obviously, if you're a new business, you're looking to start building the business credit, we can't go out and start applying for American Express and big trade lines. We got to start small, work our way up. And in your experience, how long does it normally take? If we start working on credit today, how long does it take for me to have a good score built up with Dun & Bradstreet?
It will take you a good 6 months to get a solid score going with Dun & Bradstreet.
So start now, start working on your credit now. If you have credit, those are obviously things that are good. If we can get things reporting to Dun & Bradstreet, but it will take time, it's not overnight, but with the right help, Danielle's team is we can go ahead and build an excellent score for your business. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Danielle, thank you for being here with us. A lot of great information. Enjoyed having you, and have a great rest of your day.